Welcome to whatever the name of this show is. I'm sure it has one. Probably, right?
I mean, dude.
Last couple of shows we've been talking about shitbags and where they are, what they've been up to. Today I want to go back and discuss some of the things that we started out on this show before, which are the principles that we hold most dear, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, life isn't complicated, right? Like, look, Dan, if we got in the weeds, me and you probably don't agree on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do align with is the way we live our life on a principle-based life, right? It's people are going to do what they want to do and whatever makes them happy, and they should damn well do it. Like they should have the liberty in the greatest country on the face of the planet to be able to live and be whoever the fuck they want to be. You know what I mean? Like, that's the cool part about life. And I think it's what makes us unique. But I think that we're, instead of living life off of emotions and living life off of culture and all this other stuff, like living life on principly based is what matters, right? And we'd already came up with 5 principles.
Yeah. I'll recount those now, just for people that haven't seen those episodes. The first is just the main purpose of any kind of the dotted line that we all signed, whether it's as a police officer or a member of the military or whatever else, and that's I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that statement, not any particular leader or ideology, is our foundation.
And let's say this: like you could even take this piece out. We're talking about how we live, right? We're talking about I will support and defend the Constitution of the country that I live in against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Right.
Right. So it's like it's basically the same thing as defending your home. Whatever the rules are at your home, whoever's in your home has to fucking follow them.
Right.
Right. Whoever's on your property. But if you don't believe in the principles of our Constitution, well, then leave.
Yeah, I mean, that seems, look, it's obviously not as easy as just leaving, but I do think that
there's plenty of countries you can move to.
Certainly, but I also think that, we have to make sure that the eisegesis interpretation, eisegesis, like a Greek word, it means basically you're making assumptions that are not fact-based from the original. So the Constitution says this, so shouldn't this be true? It's a if-then logical fallacy, right? Yeah. You have to protect against that. But you can see the framers, the original intent, despite things like the Missouri Compromise and slavery itself, the Constitution doesn't say all white men are created equal, right? And when it says the word men, it means mankind, yes. All people, right? They knew that. They also knew that they're not gonna. It takes generations to make change like that, right? Sure. So when you look back at that stuff, you should be looking down to the least common denominator. What is the one lesson out of this that's more important than everything else? The First Amendment. The most important lesson is that people should not be penalized for speech and thought. They can't be.
Yeah, they can't be. But you get those people who they walk around and they're always just trying to show, like, they're anti, not just like they're just anti everything, right? Like if you said
contrarians, yeah,
they're contrarians, and they're always looking to shove it to the man, or they're always looking, like, they always look at everything as how can I fuck the system,
right? And it's, look, I mean, there's a time and the place
100%.
To say fuck the system, but it's not always and everywhere.
It's not always.
You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
The next principle, number 2, that we developed was I would do something every day to help my country, my countrymen, or all men. And that is one of the most important things. That might be the most important one on here, to be honest, because we're seeing it today. There's a level of appreciation and respect that seems to only come from people who have experienced sacrifice at some point in their life. And I've, for the life of me, not been able to figure out a way to communicate that to people who have never experienced it. Now, you find the rare bird who does understand it without having experienced a sacrifice, but that is extremely rare. And it's certainly hoping for that is not a game plan. I think that we need to, because we know that people who have sacrificed typically have a greater appreciation. And I think that is the ultimate essence of that hard times make hard men situation.
Yeah.
I think we have to start instilling, and we have Tim Kennedy coming on the show Tuesday next week to talk about this and talk about his school, about how we need to, at the earliest possible level in a human being's life here in America, start to teach them about civic service, civic duty, and sacrifice, right? So my idea is that starting in the 5th grade or somewhere around there, to graduate each grade as you pass all the way through high school and college, there is some kind of civil service requirement, whether it be working at a nursing home, volunteering, picking up trash on the fucking highway, going into an underserved community and helping them, or whatever it is, right? Teach people that, one, you've got it pretty good. And because you have it pretty good, you have a duty to sacrifice some of your goodness to make everybody else a little more good. That's what a good person does, and it's what a good American does. It's the foundation of our country, right? Yeah. I mean, e pluribus unum, out of many one. That's what it says.
You don't have to have money. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to have a ton of shit. You don't have to have power. Like
money has nothing to do with it.
Well, I mean,
effort.
But
effort.
But that's what I'm saying is like. But either way, like you don't. Anybody can help someone else. Anybody can open the door for someone. Anybody can help make somebody's life a little better. Like,
right.
It's about taking what you have, whether it's knowledge, skill, whether it's your time, whatever it is you have, and being able to give that to someone else and being willing to give that to someone else when they need it, right?
Right. That's the service part of it, right? It's what Martin Luther King was talking about when he said you have two hands for a reason, one to pull yourself up and the other one to pull the next person up with you. That's what he meant by that. Now, Principle 3 is the, I guess, more aggressive version of that. And it says, I will not allow those less fortunate or incapable of defending themselves to be harmed or taken advantage of in my country. So
those are kind of like
that's the sword. I think Principle 2 is the shield. It's I'm going to do what I can
to protect
to help people. And then 3 says I'm also going to do what I can to protect people. Those aren't the same thing.
No,
they may seem the same, but they're not. Patriots say we. They don't say me. All right?
Yeah.
Now that sounds quippy, but it's true. The entire reason for all of human civilization is because we understand that together we are stronger against the forces of nature, against poverty, against any existential outside threat. That's the entire point that this city exists, that any city ever existed. But for some reason, once cities existed, we started thinking about just ourselves again. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword of like why we start thinking about ourselves. You know, when people aren't there for each other, then people are like, "Fuck it, I got to survive myself." Right? It's this survival.
It's fear.
It's when people get scared, they automatically go back into themselves and start saying, "Hey, look, I need to worry about myself before I can worry about anybody else," which is true. Which is a true fact.
Well, I mean, if you're on an airplane, they always say put your oxygen mask on before you help the next person. That's absolutely accurate. But we tend to see things in black and white a lot as human beings, and things are not black and white. They're very gray. Nuance is really important, and just because you're still struggling doesn't mean you can't help somebody else, right?
For sure.
Number 4 is the part where you actually take ownership of all this, in my opinion, and that is, as a leader, I will eat last, right? Like, I know at my house I've got provisions remaining. So what am I doing between here and my house to make sure that the rest of, quote unquote, my people are taken care of, whether it's my soldiers, my employees, my family, or just my community at large, right? Like, if you put yourself, there's this movement, like you should fucking stop talking to toxic people and put yourself first for once and all this other stuff. That is absolute nonsense. People have been putting themselves first this whole time. Like, where's all this selfless sacrifice that's been happening, that's been ruining people's lives and giving them mental health issues? It's not real. They have been indulging themselves in the drama of other people, for sure.
Yeah.
But society didn't force that. They did it because they're fucking bored or they don't want to deal with their own problems. You know what I mean? They're looking for
Yeah.
some escape, so you get wrapped up in this other
Well, I mean,
bullshit. And now you're trying to make it sound like you're winning or like you're doing something righteous by focusing on yourself again. Are you fucking kidding me?
For the last 2 days, this is something I've been talking about. You know, people have gone to like there's a fine line between, you know, accepting or stating where you've messed up, right? Like, yeah, hey, I want to quit drinking, so I just probably don't need to hang out around alcoholics, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
but what people have done is they've took it to such an extreme that now they've become the victim, like they're the martyr, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna start focusing on myself, and then they start justifying them being fucking selfish.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
By you know what I mean? And it's just
it's absolute nonsense. It's people think that by eliminating something entirely from their life that somehow they've now regained control. No, you've given it control by fucking not being able to even be in its presence anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying you should hang around assholes and tolerate them because of whatever to not give them control over you. Obviously, exercising control and getting shitbag people out of your life is a good thing. But if you have to completely abstain from something just to continue to exist, and you've given that thing more power over you than it ever had when you were doing it.
Everybody needs a cause, though, man. Like, everybody needs a fucking cause.
Sure, we've got
like everybody's got to have a fucking cause or a soapbox. Everybody's got to have a platform of. Everybody's trying to out victimize each other right now.
Yeah, it's the outrage Olympics.
And as a leader, I will eat last. That is like a metaphor for so many things, right? Like, you know, whether in your business, you know, you pay yourself after all your employees are paid and your vendors are paid, right? Like you know, when you've got people in your household, you let your kids eat first or your friends eat first and you eat last, right? Like all these things are metaphors to the way you live life. And these principles aren't just some cool phrase. They're not easy to live by. They're something you always have to continuously work by, but they're just a way of fucking life.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not like something, you know, you hear these people talk about, well, I'll be it whenever I like in the situation. No, you won't. You either live it or you fucking don't.
Yeah, you're not, there's no such thing as a life gamer. Right? There's no Allen Iversons of life where you don't have to practice at being a good person. You just automatically show up that way. That's not how any of this shit works. And to that point, number 5 is I will put more into this country than I take out of it.
Yeah.
It is everything we have is currency. Our time is probably the most important version of currency because it's the only one that can't be replicated ever. We can't make more of it. But all the other stuff, the social climate that exists here, is a currency, and it's also the amount of effort we put into making things okay for everybody, the most amount of people, affects people in a generational sense, right?
Yeah.
So people having upward control and upward mobility doesn't just affect them; it affects their children, their grandchildren, and so on. And when people see the country as a cookie jar to reach into and take cookies whenever they want to without any responsibility of refilling the jar, at some point, eventually the jar is empty. And then we're all arguing over the empty jar, and we're all guilty.
Yeah.
Everybody involved in this argument right now about America is guilty. And it's interesting because they all hate the same shit. They hate government intrusion into their lives. The left hates it when it's tax breaks to corporations. And when it's people telling women what they can do with their body. The right hates it when it's gun laws or fucking giving handouts to people who won't work,
or the
right?
vaccine.
Everybody hates everybody hates this shit for the exact same reason. I'm sorry, everybody hates the same stuff, but for a different reason. And if we focused on why we dislike these things, because they are bad things, intrinsically they're bad. If we focused on the fact that we dislike them and try to build a better world out of that, right? That's giving back. Just sitting around complaining and then assigning blame to the other side because they think differently, even though they hate the same thing you do, is fucking stupid. And it's never going to go anywhere.
Yeah, but it's a thing, man. It's like where people, you know, they want it when it's convenient for them, right? But they don't understand that it's like, you know, it's just one of those things. Like people want these things. They feel like they can pick and choose.
Right.
That they want it when it's like, and it goes back to selfishness, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to selfishness of thinking about themselves, about putting themselves first. that, you know, they want these things and these laws when it applies to their benefit.
Correct. It's
but they don't want to live by their own rules.
right. So a lot of people in the conservative world liked the Patriot Act back in the day because it gave the government the opportunity to target people who are currently targeting us. But it gave the government the power to target everybody.
Yep.
Right, instead of a limited amount of people, and that's just how it goes, right? So people liked it then, and then when it started to get used against them, they didn't like it. Now with all this censorship shit going on right now, with social media and the mainstream media in particular, the left likes it right now because they're shutting down dissenting voices, right? But once that fucking table turns, right? Once, for whatever reason, the tech companies or whomever it is has a problem with leftist ideology and they start censoring that shit, it'll be their own fault. It'll be a calamity of their own design.
But there is no.
And they'll have to live with it. No, there's no accountability. No.
Like there's no repercussions for these bad decisions that everybody's making.
No, there won't be for a while. That's the problem. And when it does happen, they'll feel like they're the victims, right?
For sure.
But that's like setting your own house on fire and then taking a seat in your living room.
Isn't this like the same thing with like the crime bill that the Democrats put in, right? Like, isn't this the same thing with? I mean, you look at. I mean, it's like you know, we talked about this on another show where, you know, the Democrats are trying to come in and act like they're the saviors for racism.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real about it. Look, the Democratic Party looks entirely different than it did back in the early 20th century, but they invented the KKK. They wrote and then, you know, stumped for and then eventually voted for the crime bill.
But isn't this why the Democrats always want to erase history?
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I think that's.
I mean, why else?
Possibly.
Why do you want to take it out? Because like then the facts come up.
Yeah, I mean, facts are inconvenient for a lot of people.
If you don't have anything to base like if you don't have anything before to base like what people said off of,
right?
Then
I mean that's been the case throughout
right?
human history, though, right? It's history is written by the victors of wars.
Yeah.
So we don't really know what happened. We don't know. I mean, we can look back and see some writings from dissenting groups that persisted throughout time, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of it from certain periods. You know what I mean? It just seems like we can tell because of his brutality that Genghis Khan was kind of an asshole, right? Same thing with Alexander. He was conquering shit all over the place. But what about the places he was conquering? I mean, it's and even the library of Alexandria, right, burned down. We lost. Who knows what we lost there?
I mean, but you even look at David and Goliath, right? I mean, you know, David was a piece of shit. And
yeah, King David. Now, the situation with Goliath happened before he was king, obviously.
For sure.
But once he became king,
he became a piece of shit.
Look, I don't know if any of this is even real or not, but the story is certainly.
No, I mean, but the story
exists. So, the story of King David is that, in my opinion, this is the biggest story from King David. There's a woman named Bathsheba, and her husband was one of his top generals. So David intentionally sent this guy to the front lines where he had no business being, so he'd be away, and then so he would eventually get killed, so he could fuck his wife, right? David lost his firstborn son because of that, at least according to the Bible. But, you know, that's a perspective. The Bible actually has. The Bible did a relatively good job of pointing out the failures of its leaders. Interestingly enough,
accountability.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, the stories are kind of weird to me, like the story of Job.
Well, of course, the stories are weird, but I mean, I'll tell you this: throughout the Bible, the one thing that's there is accountability.
To some degree.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, to some degree, more so than some of the other. But I mean, like the Quran doesn't really talk about how Muhammad was illiterate or that he was fucking a 7-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't really bring that up because that's embarrassing. Anyways, those are the first 5. We thought that was a good initial foundation for principles. Now I want to talk about some of these new ones that we're workshopping right now. And this is all going to go in the book that I'm working on right now. So number 6 is kind of a bastardization of a JFK statement, and it goes like this: I will pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, in order to assure the survival and success of liberty. And the reason I think that is an important one is because liberty, individual determinism, and personal entrepreneurship is the ultimate inoculation to tyrannical bullshit. It is the essence of upward control. You put the most amount of power in the hands of the people and then see what happens.
Yep.
Right?
And that's what it's supposed to be. That's why it's we the people, not we the government.
Yeah. So exercising authority at the lowest possible level. I talk about this all the time. It's why voting in local elections is way more important than voting for president. And people typically recognize the names of the people at the tops of ballots, the president, vice president, and then they'll recognize the senator, maybe their congressperson, but not their local officials.
Yeah.
Huge mistake that people make on a regular basis. And I think the most important part of this liberty situation, like we don't want to get into the whole nation building thing that Bush did.
No.
Right? We certainly don't. But I think a good statement in support of Principle 6 is, I will kneel before no man and I will fight any man who requires it of others. Like there should not be a world that exists where one person is subjugated by another.
Fuck yeah.
You know what I mean? And look, we can't change it for everybody, and you 100% can't change it for somebody that doesn't want it to be changed. In Iraq, for example, those people,
they do not want it to be changed.
They are not prepared for democracy. And I think the last 20 years or so has proven that. It seems like they don't want it, or maybe they're just too afraid to take it for themselves. Not the Kurds. The Kurds were plenty ready to fight, but not the rest of those folks. So, but still, you have to hold that principle. I will kneel before no man.
Yeah.
Right. And if somebody in my sphere of control, under my influence, or somewhere where I can stop it, requires that other people kneel for them, fuck that guy.
For sure.
Right. That cannot be allowed to happen, because authoritarianism anywhere fucking breeds it elsewhere.
For
you know
sure.
what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, you know, I just think the piece at the end of it sums up the whole thing. I will kneel before no man and will fight any man who requires it. Right, like that right there it says it in so many different ways. It's a metaphor for so many different things. Of, you know, and look, and when you empower, you know, and you talk about the only people that the government were having to fight with in these shutdowns were really entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And
the small mom and pop places, the big corporations got stronger and stronger, and the smaller places got weaker.
Look at all the fucking money they got.
Yeah.
Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, he's just one example, but I mean, some of it doesn't even require malice on behalf of the corporation. The corporation is the only institution that exists in that scenario that is able to fill that need once certain laws are put into place. It's the same thing as, I'm pretty sure it was Rand Paul that said it 2 years or a year ago during this whole social justice debate. He goes, look, conservatives need to start realizing that it doesn't matter if something is intentionally, I guess, racist, if you want to call it racist. I don't think racist is the right word, but it doesn't matter if something is intentionally it doesn't matter if you pass a bill with the intent of negatively affecting a single group of people. Like, the intent in that case doesn't matter. Like, sure, it excuses part of it, but once you realize that something you're doing is negatively affecting someone else, you have a moral responsibility to stop that shit
and fix it.
Right?
100%.
So I think that's a big part of it. I think it's a big part of it to take responsibility for that shit and realize that it doesn't matter what your intent was in that situation. You have to be aware of the outcome. You know what I mean? And that goes into the next principle, number 7. And I think this is a really important one too. It's one that you hear from Jordan Peterson a lot. I will promote equality of opportunity and not outcome, particularly when I am in a position of power and wealth. Now, you mentioned this a few minutes ago about the leaders eating last and helping the less fortunate. So 2 through 4, really, all 3 of those. But this one comes back full circle. If you're in a position where you guys are doing okay, and this is something that we learned in the military too, like, you get your fucking fighting position dug, and if anybody else needs help, you get their fighting position dug too, because you need every single one of those fighters to make shit happen. You have to, right?
Yep.
it's not just a moral responsibility to do it. We need that to survive. We need everybody. It's the weakest link ideology,
everybody
right?
fucking matters, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody matters and everybody's needed, right? Like, you know, it might not obviously, you know, look, you look in an arch.
Mm.
You know, not every stone is the keystone, but every stone is needed to make that arch.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's the same thing in the world, right? Like, and at any point we forget that, you know, we've got to pull ourselves
Well,
back.
you'll pay the price, right?
You'll pay the price.
It's very myopic to think that you're going to get away with not changing the oil in your car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Eventually that shit's going to come get you.
It'll catch up to you. You know, you might get a few more miles down the road because you didn't have it sitting there.
Yeah.
Getting an oil change,
Yeah.
but eventually, you know, the car that took care of itself, took care of every part of it, will end up passing that car.
Yeah, and it's you know, bad news doesn't get better with time. We've developed a habit in this country of hiding, just putting our head in the sand and thinking that things will just get better without our effort. That is absolute nonsense. So
that has been like something that's been trending for like a long time, of where people just think they can ignore it and it'll fix itself.
Yeah, it's not. It's obviously, well, it's the bystander effect at large, right? So, Kitty Genovese, I think it was in Brooklyn, gets stabbed a bunch of times. 40 or so people are standing there watching, and nobody helps. Yeah. Nobody comes to the rescue. And there's some psychological phenomena where the more people that are involved in some kind of tragedy that's happening right in front of them, the less likely anybody is to do anything about it. We have to break that mold. Be a fucking leader. Yeah. You see something wrong, don't just. I hate that see something, say something, because it's so passive. See something, do something, right? Yeah. Like, I might not be able to end homelessness. I might not be able to end hunger at large. Of course I can't. I'm a fucking single human being, but I can end that motherfucker's hunger right now, today. Sure. I can give this bitch food right now.
I can fix one meal for him.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And then I can go home and be like, hey, who can I give what to be a force multiplier to help more people? You know what I mean? Yeah. That is certainly something that is in the realm of possibility for everybody to do. All right, before we get on to these next ones, let's do these sponsors. Actually, we've only got Ghostbed today.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you who is principle based. It's Ghostbeds.
Yeah.
You know, they have been huge supporters of the people who support this country and go around and support the people. And I mean, you know, the Ghostbed is you know, the people that they support are people who live by these principles.
Right.
And it's kind of incredible. But you can go to Ghostbed. They've got the cooling technology through the Lux. They've got the pillow top. They've got the cooling sheets, the cooling pillowcases. They're doing 30% off site. Well, I think they're still running the 4th of July sale. You can go. They have a 20-year warranty. They have a 36 months pay-as-you-go. Just such an incredible company that's always out there supporting. I mean, think about who backs up their mattress with 20-year warranty. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's wild.
So go check them out at ghostbed.com/drinkingbros.
Yeah, ghostbed.com. They also got the new they got that new mattress topper that's super dope. It's a 3-inch mattress topper. It's made out of the same material as, I believe, the Ghost Lux. So it still has cooling technology, so you can use it anywhere you go. I really wish they made one that was small enough to fit inside of a piece of luggage.
So you could travel with
I might just start carrying a separate suitcase with that and a ghost pillow in it, because I hate being in a hotel without my shit, to be honest. I've just gotten so spoiled by all of that. Yeah, ghostbed.com. Well, a little bit, yeah. Ghostbed.com/drinkingbros. You get all those deals. And they've always got some new shit popping up too, so make sure you check them out. All right, so moving along. The next one here, this is number 8. And again, 6 through whatever we get through today. I've got 11 on here, but 6 through whatever. We're still workshopping these, so we want to hear your guys' thoughts. Sure. We'll post this stuff after this airs on Friday. We'll post this on Instagram and here in the fucking YouTube comments, if you wouldn't mind. Or if you want to just leave a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you are listening to this, leave a review and comment. Well, we see all those as well, and it helps us. The feedback really helps us develop these ideas and flesh them out further. So, at any rate, number 8 is another one that I think is super important, and a lot of these kind of dovetail into one another. They're based on the same general idea, but they're specific calls to action. So,
Yep.
number 8 for me is I will reject divisiveness in all its form. For anyone who's trying to divide us is trying to conquer us. When I say divisiveness, what do I mean? There's a lot of things. Like, people that listen to this show would probably assume we're talking about the 1619 critical race theory nonsense or intersectionality or whatever else, just the race baiting shit that happens on a regular basis, and we are talking about that. I'm also talking about purity tests, where if somebody doesn't 100% align with everything you believe politically,
Cancel
you automatically cancel them. They're not good anymore or whatever. We've seen it happen. So, I mean, it's happening with Black Rifle right now. It's just absolute nonsense, the way that shit is going. Alex,
Is it still going?
yeah, well, I guess. Alex Jones decided to weigh in on it this week, and, I've got something for him.
What did he say? Did he go negative?
Yeah, very negative. Yeah, he called them cowards and all kinds of other stuff.
Alex Jones?
Yeah, Alex Jones, who's never lifted a finger in defense of this country, called a bunch of called guys with like a couple hundred years of military experience between them cowards. That's pretty interesting, right? That's
dude,
that's fundamentalism though. It lacks irony.
Why do you think I've never gone on his show?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna not go on someone's show because I think
Dude, I think he's a piece of shit.
Well, I mean, he's not right here. He's been wrong before. He's been right before. We'll see how this all plays out.
Well, he's got a common denominator of fucking putting his fucking foot in his mouth.
Oh yeah, he does that a lot. I mean, he's an entertainer, right? So he's every now and again you get too hyped up on your own message and start, veering off the rails. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure I'll talk to him soon. But anyways, if you're coming from a position, like if your go-to position is that me and my side are right, everyone else is wrong, and there's no fucking nuance to that statement, then you will never progress.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean progressives. I mean your ideas won't become, they won't stay relevant for the current culture you're in.
For sure.
You know what I mean? If you truly believe in these ideals and these principles, then you have to do the work. You have to listen when people talk, right? You have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they mean what they're saying in the most flattering light, and they're not. Don't sit there. It's called the principle of charity. You don't just sit there and try to pick apart what they're saying. Like, well, here's where you're fucked up right here. Mm-hmm. Like, sure, be critical, analyze things, but assume people are coming from a good place, and give them the most give them the benefit of the doubt, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, and listen, and then say, what about this, right? Or what about this? Here's where I think you might be wrong, or here's where I disagree. But the intent should be, this is a good point for relationships in general, by the way. If you are in a relationship with somebody, whether it's a friendship, business partnership, a romantic relationship, whatever it is, you should operate from this position. We are where we are now, and we have a common end state that we want to get to, right? Whatever it is. We want to sell the company for whatever. We want to fucking be happy in our lives and support each other, whatever it is. Like, that should be the end state itself. Like, where we're trying to go should be the only fixed position in all of that. Everything else is up for discussion, right? Because things change.
Yeah.
Your situation changes. Your opinions might change on certain things.
I mean, I just sometimes like I've been catching myself here lately. Like when something bothers me, I go, why the fuck do I care?
Yeah.
Like, why do I care what this person's doing? Why do I care what this person thinks? Why does it, like, how does it affect me? And how does it hurt other people? And if it doesn't, I don't give a fuck.
Right. I mean, it's, you really, if you operate from that position where we're all trying to get to the same place, right? If the intent is to, let's say, we want the best country on earth, we want to stop saying that and make it true, right?
For sure.
And if it is true now, or if it becomes true, or if it was true, make it true again, or keep it true, whatever. We want that to be the case. If you all of your ego, if you're involved in politics, should be assigned to making this the best place to live for the most amount of people, right? Or for everyone if possible, but at least for the most amount of people. And if that's not your end state, or if you're in a romantic relationship and your end state isn't to go through life, support each other, love each other, be happy, right? If you both don't have the same end state goal, then you will never succeed. It's like playing tug of war and you're on different sides of the rope. You're never going to win. There's no outcome that can happen if you're not on the same side of that shit. So the divisiveness, it only comes from people who are trying to fucking take your power away from you, right? So when, and you see this shit all the time, when two people you don't like are starting to be friendly together, you got to do something to stop that, right? In war or business or whatever.
It's the wedge, right?
Yeah. And people can't see the wedge while they're in the mix, unfortunately, and it's that ants analogy, right? That people talk about, that we've talked about here before. Fire ants and black ants in a jar together, they will coexist and not attack each other. And then if somebody shakes the jar, they assume the other side is attacking them, and they will start attacking the other side.
But the biggest part of all these principles is like knowing what your end goal is. Right, like being able to state, like, what do I want to accomplish with this?
Right.
Like you take Alex Jones doing that to Black Rifle.
Alex Jones is trying to make money. That's all he cares
either
about.
Way, like there's
that's
no way he thought about how, like, anything further than a small snippet of right now of what this effect's going to be.
Right.
Like, there's no way that he, just like with the Sandy Hook. I mean, I guarantee you that he would go back and change what he said. Or how he said it, at least.
You think certainly he would change it, at this point.
At this point.
Right, but that should be...
But Alex Jones is a in-the-moment thinker.
Yeah.
Instead of a long-term, like, what are the secondary and tertiary effects of this? So I think that, like, with these principles, before you can even know where to apply them and at what level to apply them, you have got to figure out, where do you want to be in 5-10 years? What do you want your life to look like? Because here's the deal. If you get up in the mornings and you fight everything based on principles, you will spend your whole fucking life fighting and not getting anywhere.
Right.
And it's like, I've started trying to back off this of, like, just because you're right doesn't mean it needs to be said. It's not. Is it your fight? Is this the hill you want to die on?
Right.
Is it worth your time and energy? Like, can you get more done by fighting this? And look, nobody's going to argue that you're wrong.
Right.
But what's the bullshit? I mean, when you fight with pigs, again, we talked about it the other day. When you fight with pigs, you might beat the pig's ass, and the pig might have needed it, but you both get muddy, and the pig loves it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you're fighting the wrong battle at that point.
Exactly.
And it's not one that can even be won in the first place, but it's certainly not one that's worth your time. And it's not really productive for anybody. So all of this, I mean, your first instinct is to lash out at anybody that you've pre-assigned blame to. Like, I think that this group of people is doing this, and that's affecting me this way. That's a schema that your brain builds to make sense of the world.
Yeah.
But we have done very little to challenge the way we individually view the world. As Americans, we all think that we're right about everything.
Well, we think it's everybody else and not ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, instead of looking in the mirror.
Well, or instead of taking the wooden beam out of your own eye, you know what I mean? You're picking splinters out of somebody else's eye. I believe that's a story in the Bible as well. So the divisiveness isn't just on one side. It's not just race baiting headlines. It's not just the left trying to divide everybody. There is a large faction of people in the conservative community that the people that coined the term rhino, for example, Republican in name only, that think that somehow some kind of intrinsic standard republicanism that everybody should just live by. And if you don't, you're evil. It doesn't make any sense, right? It's not just the left that does that stuff.
But everybody's looking for taglines. Right, like people's focus is so small. Like, nobody's trying to educate themselves. Nobody's trying to go out and see the whole story.
No, people just want the last word.
People just want the last fucking word. And, like, I mean, look how Donald Trump Like everybody's starting to do it now, right? Like he had a nickname for everybody.
Yeah.
Crooked Hillary.
Yeah.
Right? Sleepy Joe. I mean, but and that caught on because guess what? Like it was taglines. Everything's
Right.
a tagline. You look at Fox News, look at all the media. They're all trying to get that one line out of you because that's all people hear and that's all they remember.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting with the Black Rifle thing too because they agreed to do some interviews with the New York. It wasn't even the New York Times directly. It was somebody that worked in the story ended up there obviously because it became a big story. But at any rate, there's something on Drinking Bros a couple of weeks ago. We talked to this woman, or it might have been last week. Her name's Julia Galiff, and she talked about something called the Gelman amnesia theory, right, or effect rather, and it's something that actually the author of Michael Crichton coined. But what it means is people will go to a publication or a standard, a person or a publication or whatever else, and they will see a piece of data that is clearly fucked up, right? So let's say you go to the Washington Post and they post something about stock trading and you read it and you know about stocks and you're like, this is fucking stupid. But then you flip the page and completely forget that just happened and then take their stock advice on page 2, right? You forget that is not a trustworthy institution when it comes to this subject. Now, in what fucking world over the past several years at least has the New York Times been a trustworthy fucking resource when it comes to conservatism or gun rights or anything that has to do with the news, right?
Again, man, when you take away, history is statistics, right? Like history is analytics of the world. Well, when you erase history, you erase anything that you can base all this off of.
Right.
Right? Like when you have stories on Instagram and Snapchat, like when you can place your stuff like on Facebook, like the shit's deleted in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's easier to say shit and not have to be held accountable on it because it's gone. Right? And like people have nothing to base. Like there's no way to have a platform anymore. You don't need credibility. That's what brands used to be. Fox News, CNN, like they all used to have credibility, and that's how you knew that you trusted a news source. Well, now
credibility is not measured.
Credibility
is no longer measured by the factual
by how good
accuracy.
you do your job.
It's not measured by the factual accuracy of the reporting anymore. It's measured in whether or not you say what I agree with.
Well,
that's confirmation bias at scale, and it's fucking poison.
But that's because the network's priorities went away from. They're just chasing the money instead of caring about, because guess what? Credibility is not based on how well you do your job anymore. It's based on how many people can you get. I can literally pay to get my shit in front of more people now.
Right.
It's not about having any credibility. You don't even need it anymore. All you need is money, because guess what? You've got these platforms to get in front of everybody's faces of running ads and shit like that. And that's all anybody cares about. These Fox, CNN, any big corporation only cares about ads and how many clicks they get, not based on there's no accountability for how accurate and factual their information is.
Right, and people would conflate. People will conflate a lot of things with patriotism on both sides of the aisle. But what is truly patriotic is sacrificing your own benefits, whatever they happen to be, whether it's money or time or comfort or whatever, to make sure that the country succeeds. That's what real patriotism is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we'll get into the commerce thing in a sec, but I want to go into number 9 here, which is I will ensure justice comes to those who deserve it, whether it be punishment or reward. Now, there's 2 parts to this stuff. We talked to Peter Boghossian about it two or 3 weeks ago, about how do we change this system where social currency has flipped from being honest and honorable to being right first or to being the most offended person or whatever the fuck it is, right? There's social clout and currency and being offended now. If you can identify yourself somehow with one of these groups that believes they've been oppressed, for example, then you've somehow climbed the ladder of social currency.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
you and your opinion and everything you do is now more valuable because you were oppressed at some
it's
point.
even that way in the military. Like how many disabled veteran hats can you get on? Like it's like instead of being, you know, instead of being proud of what you've done,
Right.
it's more about like it's like we want to out PTSD each other. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, like I wear the hat and I fucking wear the T-shirt that says dysfunctional veteran, and I'm gonna grow my beard out, and I'm gonna have my PTSD dog that says don't touch, and then I'm gonna put my sign out in my front fucking yard that says don't shoot fireworks because it might bother me. But then I'm gonna walk around and talk about how I wish I could go back and kick indoors and shoot people in the face.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like there's no accountability to well pick which one fucking you want.
Right. And
right?
it's
like
it has to go both ways though. So as much as we all have a proclivity to be to react negatively to things that we feel negatively about, and that's a reasonable thing to do, by the way. It's not, I'm not criticizing that, but we do not have the same proclivity to reward and praise people for doing the right thing as we do for punishing people for doing the wrong thing.
No,
it's not even close.
And I do think that like one of the problems has been is like we stopped. Well, we didn't reward people enough for doing the right thing. So then people said fuck it. Like they seen that people felt sorry for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Doing in being hurt or doing the wrong thing. They seen that, so they went to there.
Yeah, there's a guy. His name is Dr. James Dobson, and I think I've mentioned him on this show and others before. He led Focus on the Family, if you ever heard that, in church back in the day. Obviously, I'm not a religious person, but this guy is kind of a social scientist. He's got his degree, I think, is in psychology and not necessarily in religion. But one of the things he says in a book that he wrote about raising children is the more, and this is a profound statement, by the way, the more frequently you catch your kids doing the right thing, the less frequently you'll catch them doing the wrong thing. Which means that people want validation. They need feedback. It's like shooting steel. When I hear that steel ring out, I get a dopamine hit. I know I did the right thing, and my everything I've done up to that point, that sound of steel being hit is a reward to my fucking sensory, right? Patting somebody on the back, saying, hey, looks like you've been going through some rough shit. I appreciate how you've been dealing with it, and you still are focused on helping other people. Or I know it wasn't easy for you to admit you were wrong. Or I think it's admirable that you, with new information, changed your opinion, because that's how we should, like, rewarding people for behaving in the way that we should expect all of ourselves to, and it has a cascading effect. If you start doing that in your circle of friends and family, then other people will start doing it, and they'll start doing it with their circle of friends and family as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it becomes contagious.
It's psychology is more contagious than any virus that's ever existed, and we have completely failed at every level. I don't think I've ever seen any military group or certainly not a governmental institution, not our education system, not even the way we raise our kids, where we prioritize finding what's right over finding what's wrong. Now, there are ways in the military that this is kind of institutional. For example, when you're doing AARs, the typical cadence of an after-action report is sustains, improves, and then you go back and talk about the rest of the shit you did well, right? So sustains means here are a bunch of things we did really well. Here are some things we should improve on, and then here's the full picture that looks pretty good now, right? Now, sometimes you suck out loud and you got to get lit up for it. But for the most part, that structure exists, that reporting structure in an AAR exists because people that trained people at the highest level in the most dangerous situation on earth knew that rewarding people for their good behavior was more important than fucking criticizing them for their bad behavior. But there is no tolerance for that in our fucking society anymore. Like, it doesn't, where do you see that exist on a regular basis? Where do you see people saying, hey, you used to be wrong about this 2 years ago and now you're right? That's a great thing. And what people actually say is, you're a sellout. You just changed your mind on that 2 years ago. Yeah. Okay, I was wrong.
Yeah, and like, and I tell you, if we started rewarding people who did the right things and stopped rewarding the shitty things, you would have more people wanting to do the right things.
Right. I mean, if we stop rewarding people for associating their entire personality and character with victimhood, for example, right? I mean, it's whether or not they've been victimized or not, and a lot of people have for sure.
For sure.
There's no question about that. But if you make that your identity, then you become a victim for life. That doesn't help somebody, right?
Sure.
That's like a child, and I hate to. I'm not saying that people have been victimized have
No.
think like children, but if a child falls down, they react how you react, right? If they start, if they fall down, and you're like, "Oh shit, are you okay?" They're gonna cry because they want that fucking validation.
I mean, I came back. I got out of the Marine Corps and I was the fucking victim.
Mm.
Like I got out of the Marine Corps and I was like, man, like, dude, I had two go-to answers. If you called me out and said, hey Dakota, why are you being such an asshole? Well, you don't get what it's like. You weren't there. You don't know what it's like to lose your whole fucking team.
Right.
What did you do? You know what I mean? Like, dude, I had the trump card.
Yeah.
Right. But guess where it got me?
Nowhere. Yeah. That's you're
Right,
basically just digging a hole in the ground
Digging
at
a
that
fucking
point.
hole.
Yeah.
Like people can only be around that for so long, and then when they feel like they can't do anything to help, they're like, fuck it, see ya.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And finally, like, I had to just sit here and take accountability and be like, what did I learn from it? How can I be fucking better about it?
Mm.
And how do I use that to fuel? Like, I think you can either use situations you've been put into as either your fucking parachute,
right,
or as your fuel.
Yep.
Right. You can either fucking float through life, or you can use it as your fuel to go out and fucking get something.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that I've said before is that if you're able to turn your pain and suffering into empathy for other people, you can save them and you can save yourself.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, the way I've looked at it is like the more bad situations I go through, the more people I can relate to and help.
Mm.
The more I've hurt and the more I've felt, the more terrible shit that I fucking see, the more I can relate to. It's kind of like going on a call, right?
Mm.
Like I sometimes I go on a call and, like, if I got guys on my shift who have no kids,
right?
Well, and there's a kid. Well, guess who can relate and talk to that kid?
Yeah, for sure.
I can, because I'm a dad, right? I can
Right.
talk to them about kid movies or whatever and try to get their mind off of it, right?
Right.
But why is that? Because I'm a dad. And the more experiences and the more terrible shit I can go through, it just gives me the superpower of being able to relate to people in a way that nobody else can.
Right.
And it's actually an honor.
Yeah, and it's also a responsibility, right? I mean, if you've got there's an old story. The first time I'm sure it's a lot older than this, but the first time I heard it was on the West Wing. Leo McGarry was talking to somebody about they were talking about Alcoholics Anonymous, right? But the premise was guy falls down in a hole, like in a well, right? And his friend comes by. I'm sorry, and a doctor comes by, and he's like, "Hey doc, can you help? I'm stuck in this fucking hole." Yeah, you're not. He's like, "Hey doc, I'm stuck in this hole. Can you help me?" And the doc's like, "Sure, I'll help you." Writes him a prescription and throws it down in the well. He's like, "All right, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this?" Priest comes by and he's like, "Hey, Father, can you help me? What the fuck? Get me out of here." The priest is like, "Yeah, sure," and he prays for him and then he walks away. Then his buddy comes by and he goes, "Hey, dude, can you get me out of this fucking hole?" And the guy says, "Sure, yeah," and he jumps down in the hole, right? And the guy's like, "What the fuck are you doing? Now we're both stuck down here." And he says, "Yeah, but I've been here before and I know the way out." Right?
Yep.
That is a perspective that you can get for like any negative thing you go through in life. Whether it's business or a personal relationship or any kind of suffering. And if you can turn that into a way to not just dryly educate people on how to deal with it, but to actually have empathy.
Go through it with them again.
Yeah. Because that's what cognitive behavioral therapy is, right? You're exposing yourself to something to develop a callus, but also to develop a roadmap to deal with it.
For sure.
So I think that's a hugely important thing, and I think it's important to reward that kind of behavior too. Not just we spend way more time criticizing the behavior we don't like, and not nearly enough time rewarding the behavior that we do like.
And both of them are a choice.
Yeah, for sure. There's certainly a choice. Now this next one is a callback to what you were talking about before. I will place virtue above commerce, right? Principles above money. My efforts toward the public good will always trump my efforts towards my own good. And this new trend that we have going on, where self-care and all this bullshit somehow makes you fucking righteous and justifies you being a selfish twat all the time. fuck that shit, man. At what point in all of human history has sitting around talking about ourselves been a good fucking thing? You know what I mean? Service to other people is what fucking makes people great. That's what makes people great. You see people like all of these wealthy or brilliant people who end up committing suicide is because they material things, while they can buy you experiences for sure, they have no real value right before your head hits the pillow, right? It just doesn't. I don't care how much, the more money I get, the more I just give it away.
I mean, let me just say this.
I don't give a shit. Like, look, there's a certain level of comfort you can buy, and I appreciate that fact, and I would want that for more people than just myself.
But money can't buy you happiness.
No, it will. Money will not buy you fucking the things that you can't buy with money, which is most things.
Well, and all of it comes down to what you value, right? If you value money, you're an empty person anyways.
Right.
If you value people and relationships, then money can't buy you that, right? Yeah, I mean, I think with this, it's yeah, I mean, this is so big, right? Principles above money, right? Don't be a fucking sellout for, you know.
Yeah. But there, I mean, it's even this is nuanced though. So I know, for example, as somebody with my personal experience, I know that the bigger I can make this particular business, this media network that we're on right now, the more accurate information you can get to more people, but also the more money we have to influence things and better the world that we live in. My old first sergeant, Kenny Johnson, used to say, he would say this to all of his NCOs, and even all the enlisted people in general. He would say, if you find yourself in a situation where you think things are unjust and unfair, work hard, do the right thing, rise to a position of power, and then change that shit.
Yep.
Right? Like, take fucking personal responsibility. Personal responsibility isn't just waking up in the morning and going to work. You know what I mean? It's looking outside and making sure that your neighborhood's safe.
For sure.
There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And sometimes it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you friends. Sometimes maybe it costs you family. It's certainly going to cost you time and money. It has to, right? Because those are the currencies that we deal with on a most regular basis. But I promise you this: every dollar you put in to sacrifice will pay off
for sure
in some way, whether it's a tangible amount at some point or not. I've never given something away and been upset about it after the fact. Sure. So I think that's one that we need to flesh out a little more. There's a lot going on with that one. The last one that I want to workshop as well, and I'm not sure how I like this particular phrasing, but it's something that will resonate, I think, certainly with a lot of our people, and it's, I will live a life worth dying for.
Well, because that's what costs for you to live this life.
Yeah.
Somebody has had, at some point, if you are, I don't care if it's day one of the history of America, at some point, if you live on this soil, you live under this flag, somebody has died for you to do that.
For sure, yeah. I mean, in almost every instance. And it's something that resonates, I think, a lot with our guys because, you know, when you think about your friends that you lost, and we all know that the vast majority of people who have died in these wars not only do they not know about geopolitics, they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Once you get there, it's not about that anymore. It's about protecting the people that you're with. And you know what that individual sacrifice looks and feels like. And a lot of people don't. They don't know what that feels like, right? So it's on you to educate them. So we know that. That's something that we've been able to resonate for a while. We've not been able to communicate that to the general public. I think this might be, I'm not sure exactly how we'll end up phrasing this one in the end, but I think that this might be one of the more important principles of all of human life.
Live a life worthy of the sacrifices that are made for me to have it.
Yeah.
Because there's people, teachers, there's fucking people who are cops, EMS, firefighters, like there's people serving in countries.
I mean, everything. Even somebody that just takes the time out of their day to come help you move. You know what I mean? That seems reductive.
I want to live a life that's worthy of that person's time.
Yeah.
Of that person coming to help me. Of your friendship. Of you know what I mean? Like of worthy of the sacrifices that are made for me to have the life that I have.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, and I think if you root yourself in that mindset, then you start to choose the things you do and how you act a lot differently. And
For
you also start seeing your own time as a gift to other people as well, right? Which
Yeah.
is what it is.
Well, I mean, you feel valued because
Yeah.
you know that they're doing the same thing.
Yeah, and it's I really think that that is something that there's an old phrase in command school, in the Army command school, and it's I can't remember exactly what it says, but it's like don't ever always give a name to an operation that you would be okay being in your eulogy, right? So don't name something like Operation Wicked Thunder or something like that just because it sounds funny or cool. I mean, to be honest, I would like that. That'd be fucking hilarious. But
Yeah.
you know, the general
Operation Stepmom.
yeah. Well, that's what Giorgio's on right now. But yeah, I think if you map that thinking onto life at large, what is the if somebody were to eulogize me today, what would they say? What would I want them to say? You know what I mean? And I don't think you should care so much about what other people think of you. That's not the point. The point is, what am I doing in my life, and how will that be contextualized from other people's perspective? And what does that mean to me?
Well, I always say like, you know, every day, every time you come in contact with somebody, you're writing your eulogy. How you made them feel, what you did for them, is exactly how they're going to remember you.
So, I mean, look, if you're sitting at home right now wondering about the job you're doing, wondering about how your relationship is going, wondering about how your kids are getting through life, your family members, your friends, or society at large, like, what are you doing today?
Yep.
What are you doing today to
be worthy?
To be worthy of the sacrifice that's been made for you, right? I think that's something that we should all ask ourselves on a regular basis.
100%. Well, you know where I'll see you.
See you in hell.
See you in hell.